Supportables, this is way later than normal. Hopefully this is the latest one of the year. Tons of reasons why, but let's not get into them. Instead, we'll jump right into the NFL because it was a pretty important week, but even more so for our league. We're going to see things are getting pretty tight in the middle here, so every matchup is going to matter. I'm going to say that at least 3 or 4 times probably in this video, so I'm not going to repeat it now. Let's get NFL stories and then on to what happened in Week 6. Week 6 is come and gone, and by the end of this video, I'll be talking about let's go Week 7, and 7 is half of 14. So we are legitimately in the mid-season of our fantasy leagues, which brings a lot of excitement, but also when we look back on a league, I like to think, so what did we learn from this? I did make a small list. Lesson number 1, I think the USA still low-key hates the UK. I don't mean just in like a tariff thing, no political commentary here that I'm really meaning to make. I don't think they go all back to like redcoats, but they just seem to keep sending them garbage teams to play garbage games. I mean, this game, the Broncos and Jets, obviously, is tailor-made for the expression close doesn't necessarily mean good. I mean, we are dealing with a nation that calls a 0-0 game acceptable and a maybe food choice palette, which doesn't necessarily require a lot of spice to be tasty. So they don't need a lot of action, but you really gave them a wear down. Probably a game that I would be willing to bet, if we're being honest with ourselves, not even fans of the teams were excited to watch. And it's not like it was a surprise. Lesson number 2, a short one, but a sweet one. If you make Las Vegas look good, you will lose your job. Sorry, Callahan, but it had to be somebody to be the first. Tennessee, we'll see how they rebound. Number 3 is more of an or, because there's 2 kind of this could be. Either Penix Envy is legit in Buffalo. I mean, I could also say they like a little Bijan on their sandwich just because Atlanta steamrolled them in a lot of ways. I've been sitting on that Penix joke for a long time, and it's not the last time I'm going to make it. Or should Buffalo be learning that you need to surround Allen with more than just Allen? I know they have that model in KC, and we'll be getting to them in a second, just trust me. But if you look at their roster and where they're spending their money, there are some defensive talented guys, and obviously they want to make sure it's more balanced. Cook is legit, but the window is going to get smaller and smaller. And if you really look at his wife's career, he's going to be in the gym a lot more if his wife keeps having performances next to Michael B. Jordan, because he's got to make sure he's keeping up his end. I mean, the anxiety there must be legitimate. But as a player, you only have so long to capitalize on this. You got to give him a few more weapons. So it could be A, could be B. Last lesson, another A and B. But this one is a little bit more topical. We were talking about the Chiefs, and they are that model. And it's funny to say, but they've been boring for the last couple years. Even though the fact that they win or lose in Super Bowls, we know they went from an explosive offense. They split their money and spend a lot more on defense. So now they're kind of dull, but they're back to exciting this year, and they actually have some receivers, and then Rice is coming off the suspension, so they could be back, but their question is more along the lines of Brian Branch, overreaction, or is this on brand? Now, you got to think about it from the Detroit and Casey's perspective. This is an if or. I mean, this is the team that claims to be biting off kneecaps, and yet words still hurt them. So in some ways, you have to acknowledge that that's a little bit of an inconsistent bubble. You can't present yourself as the monsters of the league that can take down everybody except for a few little insults. Or is Mahomes just that freaking annoying with all his hand signs and weird kind of dexterity movements? Honestly, I could see either one, but super rare that someone gets popped in the handshake line. And not even the guy that they say was trash talking. So how that went down, hopefully we find out soon. Still not touching the Sanchez one, so no more lessons to be learned here. Except to kind of tie it all together, we are in a very critical part. Buffalo and Baltimore are on buys. That is going to have some impacts and maybe save some people who've been playing Baltimore people recently. But either way, let's just focus on our league first, because moving ahead to Week 7, things are definitely going to get interesting. Possibly in another week, 4th and Conquer, I'd be talking to you about how going just over your predicteds was enough to cash in your second W and get some momentum. Unfortunately, it was not, because you went up against Pamela, who was our number 1 and is on a bit of a run of her own. Drake, not so maybe. Maybe Drake definitely was the quarterback 2. That's pretty big. The fact you picked the right kicker by 2 points, that's pretty big. Also pretty big in this matchup, 2 defenses, and we only had 3 total in the top 5 that people played this week. Rams number 1, that was one of the shining moments for 4th and Conquer, but Denver was number 3. But I think even more impressively, man, Rico Dowdle just keeps doing it. He was the running back 2, and let's not forget running back 1, Bijan. Running backs 1 and 2 are going to win it for you most times if you can nail both of them down, but definitely in a week where on the flip side of the coin, there was a little bit of injury concern here, especially amongst the flexes and just underperformances in general. So congratulations to Pamela on that one. Like I said, 4th and Conquer, you definitely had the chances. You had the quarterback 5, the wide receiver 5, and the running back 3, plus the defense 1. So in any other week or just some more performances, maybe we'd be singing your celebrations. Unfortunately for you, you're not, and you stay in the basement currently, but don't worry, that's about to get competitive too. Pamela, you would be first in a lot of reasons or in a lot of metrics, but unfortunately, we are bumping into a bit of a juggernaut who I'm going to be talking about later on. But for you, you were in second place, scoring high. Things are going well. I'm skipping our second highest scoring team of the week because they're going to come up later because they played someone who massively underachieved. So Team Kickass, you're the next one to talk about, and tied with Pamela in record, just not quite in score, but you're getting there. Congratulations on the win. Now, this was a pretty pivotal matchup, 2 teams within the playoffs, and you scored enough that both are still currently in playoff spots, so you got to be pretty happy about that. Team Kickass, you did it just kind of with consistency again, but then, I mean, looking at someone like McCaffrey, in a week that running backs didn't go off, he was super helpful, even though you had a dud. But you did have JSN, who seems to be always on the top 5 list. He was the wide receiver 2, and you did have the kicker 2, if we scroll down here in Digger the kicker. And then just did enough to kind of get by. Your quarterbacks were fine. Well, Fields wasn't, so I was looking more at Caleb here. And you did enough to be well over predicted. You did have some points on the bench you could have gone to. Didn't necessarily need them against NorCan. Now, I talked about the defenses in the last bit and about the defenses not really being started in the top 5. Here was the other one. Pittsburgh was the defense 5, so that was one of the people you were going for. And you did have the running back 4 in Skadaboo. Now, if we started putting in ripping your shirt off and flexing on national television for extra points, you might have cashed in, and that might have been enough to actually ring the bell here. Unfortunately for you, you had some injury concerns, and obviously Egbuka, as someone who has him in many other leagues, this one stunk because I mean he's been lighting it up. He's been a guarantee. Ted McMillan finally got you a couple touchdowns, and he had a great week. This one, we're not so sure. It's not looking probable for the next week, but we don't know. At least I think the big injuries are off the board. Ridley's another one, though. I mean, you weren't expecting much from him, but you were certainly expecting more than 2.3. That might have cost you in the end because this one did come down to the last few points, but you didn't have any better options really on the bench either, so it is what it is. When Stafford's going to underperform against Baltimore's defense, who I kind of expected a big game there. I think so did you both. But hey, you're 3-3, not what you wanted, but you are 4th in the league. That is something to say, and I apologize. I did skip over Warren. He was a tight end 3. Apologies for that one. Just highlighting maybe the 2 players that you had the deal of the century with a couple weeks ago. So could have been worse for you. You're still top 4, but Team Kickass, you're on a bit of a run. Speaking of good runs, Bench Don't Kill My Vibe as a brand has been on a run since last season, so the number of consecutive wins is certainly getting up there, but we're focused on the now. And right now, Bench Don't Kill My Vibe, obviously in first place, 6-0. Who's going to take him down? Not so sure. One of the best situations you could have found yourself in this year is this resurgence of Mahomes. He was the quarterback 1, whereas Dax was the quarterback 4. You did have the RB5 in your flex spot with Jacobs, a little bit questionable there, something I'm sure you're looking into. And you didn't even need all the points because the tight end 1, who's been huge as a tight end 1, no one was really touching Dallas Goedert at the beginning, and no one else in Philly seems to be lighting it up except for him, so I'm not sure what that's all about. Doesn't really matter for you. You took the W here over the Raw Doggers. Now, Raw Doggers, you did go under predicted. You did have the wide receiver 3 in Drake London. Great performance, his best of the year. Just underachievement in our centrals here. I mean, you had 2 Cleveland Browns on the team, so you should have known better from the get-go. Your defense, your kickers, not really getting a whole lot of points, although Indiana Jones was just outside of the top 4. If you can say that Dax was 4, you can see how close all those bunched up quarterbacks were. So you're still in the playoffs as well. As I just echoed, 3-3 right now is about as good as you're going to get, unless you just want to crack that top, because I think right now we have our number 1 who's taken off, and the rest of us are just dealing with it. So I'm not going to talk about the streak a little bit more, but we'll talk about it maybe when we get to next week's opponent to see if they're the one to take him down. But as of now, 6-0, honestly can't be any better, can it? In the somebody had to win it bowl here, both teams well under projected, both teams dealing with a lot of frustration on the day, but Malakoff should pull it off and you're staying 500, you're staying in the playoff hunt. Jackie, this was kind of your game to jump ahead if you had a few more performances. I'm talking about things in general because this is one of the rare ones. We'll even go to the bench. Not one player, bench or started, cracked the top 5. Not one top 5 positional player. Now, granted, that doesn't mean that some of the quarterbacks didn't score. And like I said, there was a lot of bunched up quarterbacks between about, 16 and 24, say, and some of those were actually the bottom half of the people who scored top 5. So the quarterbacks were fine here. Jonathan Taylor obviously is going to do what he's been doing all season. But that was kind of it. This was one of those games that you were probably just hoping for that one performance to come up and you get a 30 or a 35, and that would have won it realistically. But didn't get it. I'd say what actually maybe held onto it for Malakoff, if you were watching, Darren Waller looked horrible for most of the game. I mean, Miami looked horrible for most of the game, and then they didn't. He got that touchdown with only the second reception, saved the day, and those 6 points. I mean, we can do math. That might have pretty much been the difference. So that's what we were down to, is who scores a touchdown at the end. Tight one. Malakoff, you're celebrating. You're in the playoffs. Jackie, you're on the outside looking in. So about time to go on a run. Speaking of about time to go on a run, this is now my 3rd week at the bottom. So if I lose spectacularly, which is just fantastic. Ball too well, though. It's not like this was a close one. You were the 2nd highest score of the week. I just save it for the end so we can talk about, the loser down here. I'll talk a little bit more about what that means next week. I don't really want to talk much about my team. I don't know, poop emoji, crying emoji. Yep, that's pretty much everyone that catches or runs the ball for me. There you go. Summarized it all in 1 or 2 images. On the flip side, not a lot that actually cracked the top 5 except for wide receiver 1 and Pickens. Now, CD's coming back. We'll see what that looks like on your team. But you did just have a lot of steady points in the middle, which was more than enough. Now, you did have some people on the bench. Trey McBride was the tight end too, so now you got some tight end issues here between Kraft and him. Who's going to start each week? And that's kind of it. I think in general, when we're dealing here at the end, it's actually quite surprising for the number 2. It just suggests that aside from your kicker and defense, everyone just did their job, right? Even A.J. Brown, who's done pretty much nothing all year except for maybe 1 or 2 little highlights here, did what he was supposed to do. Can't really complain at that point. When we're looking here, again, you're just on the outside. Even though we have the same record, you've scored a few more points than me, so you're just on the outside looking in. I think matchups are going to have a lot to do with it on the stretch here, especially if we continue to have an undefeated champion. But why don't we just stop talking? We'll look at next week's schedule. We'll see how likely that might be. As I was just suggesting, we've got these log jams at 3-3, 2-4, 4-2. Now, 4th and Conquer by no means are out of it because you've scored more than me. So if you win and I don't, I drop down. That's what we're looking at here. But it is going to come down to a lot of tiebreakers as it stands. So matchups are going to matter. And obviously they have been. Our highest scoring team is not our undefeated one. So let's just take a look because it might come down to week 7 matchups. Here we go. I always like to highlight the playoff ones, but I was alluding to it. We got 1 versus 2. This is our kind of epic matchups. We have another 2 situation here. I'm filming this after Thursday, as you can obviously see now. 2 teams on the cusp here of the playoffs and tied, so that's going to be a tight one. We've got 2 and 4. I said that bunched up, so matchups are definitely going to matter. We are now in the middle part, right? 7 is half of 14, I'm pretty sure. So pay attention to your matchups, pay attention to your bye weeks. Every week's going to matter from here on out. Let's address the elephant in the room on the way out. Last week around this time, I said, don't worry, I'm going to make sure I do one of my consequences. And then this week got a bit busy. I definitely will be doing both of my consequences this week. And now I've had the 3rd week. Remember, for those who are new to the league, 3rd week is a dead week. You can only have 2 consequences in a year, but I still count as the lowest point in this week. After this, I no longer factor in. So if I am lowest, it is the next to me that will get the ding. I'm also going to get on it, send out a couple emails just about making sure I'm not the only one doing this. Let's get caught up in the next little bit with our consequences so it doesn't just end up being something. We all voted for it. Everyone wanted to keep it in. So I will do my part this week, and then I'll extend it out to the people who still owe. But hey, don't worry about that. Week 7's about to hit off. So best of luck. This is going to be a huge week, and I would be willing to bet our table and structure is around. But realistically, the matchup of the week, we have our undefeated against our number 2 and highest scoring. Can't wait. Good luck to everybody.